Hi, welcome back to Heather's Crochet Corner. You're with me. I'm your host, Heather. Thank you for joining me here on this lesson number 2, where we cover the half double crochet stitch, and the make at home project is a scarf. This is lesson number 2 in a series of 5. I do teach live classes locally. If you missed lesson 1, the video is posted. It is available to watch. We covered the single crochet stitch, and the make at home project was a coffee cup sleeve, just like this here. So just starting you off really basic with a very easy project to kind of get you into the feel of what it's like to crochet and whether it's for you. So as we mentioned, this is lesson 2. And each lesson that I have is meant to be like a stepping stone. So you learn one skill, you learn a single crochet stitch, along with how to make your slip knot, how to chain, how to turn your work in lesson 1. I will cover those same things in lesson 2 in case this is your first introduction to learning how to crochet. Lesson 3 covers the double crochet, which is something that will be taking place this Saturday at my live event in Kempville, and the project for that is going to be a headband. That video is already available. I had that up and running before the event so that people attending could reference it if they weren't able to make it. Lesson 4 covers the granny square, which looks like this because it uses the double crochet stitch, which we cover in lesson 3. And lesson 5 covers how to make a magic ring / magic circle / magic loop. Different terms, same thing. That's something that you typically use when making amigurumis or something that's round and you're working in a round versus back and forth in rows. So this is just a little planter that's got little coasters that look like flowers. So that's when you'd use a magic circle for like baskets, toys, things like that. So back to lesson 2, half double crochet. And again, the make at home project is a scarf. Now my live events are only 2 hours long. There is no way that you are going to finish a scarf in 2 hours, unless it's maybe for like your dog. But for a person, not likely. That's okay. That's why it's called a make at home project. You learn the skill, you learn the stitch, you get the pattern, you get an idea as to what you're doing within those 2 hours, and then you take that skill with you and you continue the project at home. So that's the idea behind this lesson. This is, well, part of a scarf, basically. Just for demonstration purposes at the very beginning. I will show you more about that in a bit. But before we get started here, here's my little chart that I offer everybody who attends my live lessons. I'm not sure how well you can see that there, but it's basically sizing, and it goes from like a child size from ages 4 to 5. Gives you a small or a regular sizing. Tells you the size width in inches or centimeters, and also the length in inches or centimeters. And then the next category down for sizing is another child size, ages 6 to 10 years old. Small, regular, or long, corresponding widths, corresponding lengths for those sizes. And then the adults from small, which is like teen, or if you're me at 5 foot nothing, you get your, average adult sizes, taller folks, really tall folks, and then if you want a bit extra width, some people like a wider scarf for more coverage. So all of the options, as you can see, there's really not much difference unless you get to the extra wide width. The lengths do kind of vary, and really honestly it's based on height mostly. You can probably see here, hopefully that's in frame for you. Looks like it might be. I might lift it up a bit. But basically what this is telling you is if you don't have a measuring tape handy, or you don't know the approximate height of the person you're making the scarf for, maybe it's a gift, or maybe you're donating it. Rule of thumb basically is the width of the scarf is basically measured from your pinky finger to your thumb. So that's about the width you'd want to make it if you didn't know for sure. And the length of your scarf is basically, says it's being measured from the crown of your head to the base of your feet while you're standing. So basically it's how tall you are. So again, if you're not sure, you can kind of guesstimate. I've said this in other videos. There really isn't a right or wrong in crochet. It's a creative expression. In some cases, it's art. So there's nobody that's going to scrutinize your work. They're not going to come by with a measuring tape or a ruler and say, "Oh, you are a little shy on the width. Oh, it's too long. That's not right." That's just not going to happen. No one's going to measure it and criticize. So they're just going to be super excited that you've made them something handmade. So that's basically what this chart is giving you details about. So I will just set that aside. I will, just for reference, sort of give you an idea where I am with this one. Let's see if I can, I have that all in frame. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to take a measurement of the width. So I'm just about 8 inches, give or take. I mean, it's going to stretch in both directions. So if you're not exactly, at like 6 inches, or you're not exactly at 8 inches, again, there's nobody gonna be like, "Well, I don't know, you're not quite there. I know you meant to do 7, but you're a little over." Not gonna happen. Don't sweat it. As far as the length, well, this one's a work in progress. I haven't quite finished it yet, but it's obviously meant to be for an adult size, and I am using this brand of yarn. It looks like this is a cake style yarn, so it's got automatic changing color yarn throughout. It's supposed to be sort of like even intervals, unlike different variegateds that are much shorter or longer depending. So I'm working with this. It's from Yarn Inspirations. It's a Karen Big Cakes. Why I choose to use this and highly suggest this is because your next question is, well, how much yarn do I need? I'm glad you asked. We have a little chart here, and according to this, all of my projects that I show within my lessons 1 through 5 are always going to be with 4-weight yarn. I will always use a 5mm hook. This is what I offer to all of my attendees at my live events. They all get a mini skein of 4-weight yarn, and they all get a 5mm hook so that they can make the projects that I've got in mind for them. So I'm using a 4-weight yarn. I'm making a scarf. So at the smallest end, so like kid sizing, I want at least 375 yards of yarn. And probably to cover the adult sizes, I need at least 500 yards. Okay, so that gives you a roundabout estimate as to how much you need based on, again, who you're making it for. And what I love about these big Karen cakes is the fact that, and here's what the label looks like. Here's how you know it's a size 4. There's a picture of a yarn label on the yarn label. It does tell you the recommended hook size is a 5mm. Okay, but also gives you, this is important information here, it tells you how many yards. In this case, this cake of yarn is 603 yards, and this is suggesting that I need at least 375 to 500. So the fact that this has much more than I need means I don't have to buy more, and I don't have to worry about attaching 2 strands together to get the right length that I want. So I don't have to mess with that. So it's just making it easy to make sure that whatever sizing you're going for, especially if you're trying to make something for maybe a tall person, maybe like 6'2", 6'4", you might want to add a bit extra width. You should have plenty of yarn in that cake to make the very largest size if that's what you're going for. So that's why I recommend that. This chart here is something that's super handy. You can just Google search how much yarn do I need. You'll see this and other little charts and graphics like this. So just maybe print one up or save it as a PDF for future reference. Same for that. You can look up scarf size chart and you will see this or others very much like this. But again, if you don't know the exact sizing, you're basically just going by height roughly for the length, and then anywhere from about 3 inches to 10 to 12 based on, again, the age range. Again, it's measured from your pinky to your thumb. So I'll put this aside. That's been covered. And now we are on to learning how to make a half double crochet stitch so that you can make this project here. I do have a slightly used cake. It's exactly the same thing, it's just a lot of it has been used for other projects. But this is perfect just for demonstrating what I need to demonstrate. Make sure everything's in frame for you here. Okay, I'm going to assume that if this is your first introduction to crochet, that you haven't learned how to create your slip knot, you haven't learned how to chain your foundation row, and that you haven't learned how to create the half double crochet stitch that's needed. So we'll do that. And for me, I'm right-handed as my dominant, so my hook goes into my dominant hand, which is the right. My yarn that I use to make the project, also the hand here is what creates the tension and helps to maintain the sizing of the stitches throughout the project, is in my left. So for me, that's how it works. If you are left-handed, it's going to look more like this, and that's fine too. So there are 2 ways to hold your hook. You can hold your hook like a pen or a pencil, and you can do more of this kind of an action, like a scooping kind of an action with your hand, or you can hold it like a butter knife. For me, this is how I tend to hold it. I just feel like I've got more control holding it this way. Again, crochet, there's really no right or wrong. There's a lot of matter of preference, okay? So you hold it in various ways. Try holding it one way. If you find that doesn't seem to be working for you, maybe you're having difficulty pulling the yarn through your stitches and your hooks, try holding it the other way. See if that makes sense for you. Same thing with your yarn, your working yarn. There are various ways to hold your working yarn. There are various ways to maneuver the yarn through your fingers and around your hand to create the tension you need so that your stitches are consistent. Again, matter of preference. There's no right way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. It's how it feels best for you. So for me, I tend to sort of, I'm going to leave myself a little bit of a tail, because you'll have to weave this in, otherwise your stitches will unravel. So it's important you leave a little bit of a length, that you don't just start way up here, because then you won't have anything really to sew in, and you take the risk of having all of your work unravel on you. That would be a shame. So leave yourself a little bit of a tail. And so to make your slip knot, a slip knot is used, I'd say, in probably at least like 80% of your projects. If you are not using a magic circle, or you don't intend to do like amigurumi or make things that are like rounded in shape, then those don't require a slip knot technically. But anyway, this is very much how many of these patterns and crochet projects start out. So it's really important that you know how to make a slip knot. Again, with everything else I've just mentioned, slip knots, there are various ways to create slip knots. So if you already know of a way to make one, go ahead and do that. I will show you what I show all of my beginners, because it's just a mnemonic, fun way to remember it. So I've sort of adopted a method from Mikey from the Crochet Crowd, because he's got a great way to make it, and it makes sense to me, and it's easy to remember, especially since the way he makes it, I don't actually use myself. I just teach it to beginners until they can figure out, you know, if it works for them or find their own way. Anyway, so again, my yarn is just resting in my non-dominant hand. Okay, I'm taking my fingers here from the middle down to the pinky, and I'm sort of just holding the yarn. It's not so tight that I can't pull it through, but it's just sort of there to kind of keep it in place. I'm making like a little finger gun, and we're going to pretend that this finger is a log. And what I'm showing you is called 2 frogs on a log. So we've got one frog on the log. We wrap the yarn over the finger. Oops. Here we go. I'm going to just sort of hold it in place, just like that. So you got your log, you got your 2 strands, your 2 frogs on a log, and we're going to do a bit of a leapfrog with the yarn. So with this back strand, this is your back frog, you're going to leap over that front frog. You're going to keep that little froggy there, hold it in place, and then this frog here goes right off of the log. Okay, and then your hook goes through what's left on your finger there. Okay, and that is your slip knot. So you'll notice if you pull on the section that's still attached to the yarn, you pull on that, that makes your slip knot much bigger. And if you pull on the tail end, it makes it nice and snug against your hook there. And that's kind of what you want. You don't want it so tight, but you want it just kind of like that. I'm not sure how well you can see how that looks, but it's not too tight and it's not too loose. Okay, so I do have a video that covers this more in depth. If you need to rewind it and watch it again, go ahead. But I'm going to sort of just do things once in this video because it's already been covered in other previous videos. So I'm going to just move right along. So now that you've got your slip knot, you need to start chaining. Well, how many chains do you need? Well, again, that's a good question. I'm going to start with 25 because I have already counted my stitches on my demo piece here to see what I have done. I did 25 stitches, so I'm going to do that with you. So this is how I hold my yarn. Again, it's the same way. I just take my last 3 fingers and I close them, and I use my index finger and thumb to pinch close to where my slip knot is, and I will continue to move my pinch point as the work gets longer and wider, but I will still maintain pinching it very close to my hook. So if you're gonna copy what I'm doing to get a feel for it, to see if that works for you, that's what I'm doing. I find holding my yarn this way, it gives me more stability. I can use my left hand to move the yarn around my hook if I need to. It also comes through as I'm working with it. And pinching it here helps, again, with stability. My work's not going to be flopping around. I'm going to be able to maneuver my hook into where I need it to go much easier. But again, if this hand position does not work for you, that's okay. Just take some time and play around. You can watch other YouTubers to see how they hold their yarn. Maybe something they do makes sense for you. Alright, so we're going to chain. And what chaining is, it means you've got your slip knot on your hook. This never counts as a stitch. Okay? And you're going to do what's called a yarn over, and basically your hook should be, see how it's rounded, it should be facing the ceiling. Alright, and you're going to make sure you put the yarn over the hook, okay, whether you maneuver the hook underneath it with your dominant hand like this, or you can hold your dominant hand still and move the yarn over with your working yarn hand. Whichever feels comfortable for you, you go ahead and do that. But what's important is that you are placing the yarn over the hook. And once you've done that, you can turn your hook down, okay, and then it catches that strand of yarn and you pull it through that loop. That is one chain. We need to do 24 more. Okay, so you're making sure that hook is facing up towards the ceiling. You're grabbing that yarn in whatever fashion, whether you are using your hook to grab or you use your hand to maneuver, and you turn your hook so it's down, facing the floor, pull it through. That's 2. We're going to keep doing that until you get to 25. That's 3. That's 4. That's 5. So I'm going to move a bit faster now, so feel free to put this on pause if you need more time to catch up. Feel free to rewind it if you need to see again what I'm doing. Again, there's other videos I'm going to try to remember to link in the description that kind of show you in a very much slowed down version. So again, we're at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Okay, there's my 25. That should be from pinky to thumb. It's pretty close. Again, it's going to stretch a bit, so it's just a nice sort of, you know, I can't say even because 25 is not an even number, but it's a nice number that's easy to remember. Okay, so if you're making a scarf or like an older teen to an adult, 25 stitches should get you close to where you need to be. All right. And I'm not sure if you were watching closely, but I will make note that every time you put a stitch onto your hook, you're making sure it gets into this section here that's got the width. This is the 5mm part. Okay, so making sure that you're not just stopping here where it's tapered, because if you stop here before getting your next stitch, your stitches, this is what gives you the consistency and the sizing, okay, of your stitches. So make sure you're getting your stitches on far enough. All right, we're going to continue on. We have done 25 chains. All right, so now we have to add the height, and then we have to work our way back. I'll see if I can't get this in view also, so you've got a bit of a, there we go, a bit of a visual. So you've just done your chains, you've got to add the height, and you've got to work back the other way. All right, look at typewriter. And because we're doing a half double crochet stitch, a half double crochet stitch is 2 chains high versus the single that we did in the coffee cup sleeve. So we're going to be chaining 2. Okay, so again, we've finished our work looking like this. This was your slip knot side. We worked our row going from right to left. We now have to turn our work, so you're just basically sort of flipping it over so that your slip knot tail is on the left side and your hook is back on the right. If you're right-handed, it's going to be opposite for you if you're left. So we're going to work into, we're going to go 2 chains because we need the height. We're going to, here's 1 chain. Here, I'll demonstrate real quick. Again, assuming that this is your first introduction, it's only fair that I show you how to identify your stitches. So your chains look like the letter V, okay? So see how it looks like a letter V right here? Hopefully that's in view and not too far from the camera, but it's they look like letter V's, and your chain, your stitches consist of a front loop, which is the loop that's always closest to you. Even when you turn your work, closest to you is your front loop. Back loop, always the one that's furthest from you. Even when you turn your work, that's your back loop. So you can work into just the front loop. You can work just into the back loop. You can work into both loops. And if you were to turn your chain over, you've got an extra little bump back there. These are your back bumps. They look like little scales from like a dragon. So you can, these little bumps here, there's one there, there's one there, one there. So you can work into that area as well. All right, so this is your first chain or stitch from the hook, okay, because your hook goes in here. I'll tighten that up a little bit. Okay, I'll see if I can't rest that there. So this on the hook is not a chain. Like I said before, this loop is never a stitch until it's off of the hook. So this is your first chain from the hook. This is your second chain from the hook. That is where we are working into, because your half double crochet stitch is 2 chains high. Okay, so once you've identified where your second stitch is from the hook, you can work into the front loop only, the back loop only. I am going to turn it over and work into the back bump. So I'm going to, let's see, wrap. No, I have to think that. I've been doing so many videos lately. I've been doing one a day for the last week in various stitches, so I kind of have to remind myself of what I'm doing. So I'm doing a half double crochet, so that's usually a wrap. Yeah, so you wrap your hook, that's right. Let me start that over again. So you've got your last loop here that you finished off with. We've identified where we're going into, first stitch, second stitch. I'm turning mine over and I'm going into the back bump. So you're going to wrap your yarn. You're going to yarn over. I use my finger to kind of hold it in place. Okay, find that back bump. Feel free to use your fingernail to get your hook into where you need it. You're going to have 3 loops on your hook. I'm going to yarn over. Okay. And pull through that. And pull through that. That doesn't seem right. I think you'll have to forgive me. It's like 3:20 in the morning. I couldn't sleep, so I thought, you know what? Let's create a crochet tutorial on 3 hours of sleep. So yeah, let me work that out again. And let's see. I'm pretty sure it's just, I will get it. And yeah, there's definitely 3 because that's just a single. So yeah, you definitely have to wrap. Definitely have to wrap. So yeah, wrap your hook into that back bump. You're bringing your yarn through. You have 3 loops on your hook and you're pulling through all 3. That's what we're doing. I'll do that again now that I've got it all sorted. I apologize, folks. I'm not usually up this early. So yeah, you're going to wrap your yarn over the hook. So again, it's a yarn over. So whether you take your hook and do it with your dominant hand, or you get your non-dominant to kind of assist with that, grab that. I hold it so it doesn't slide off. I find that next back bump that I'm working into. Oops, let me get your hook in there. Okay, you've got 3. Make sure your loops all get to the right spot so they're all got the same height. Yarn over and turn that hook down, and you're pulling through all 3. Whether you do 1 and, oops, this one's being a little difficult. 2 and 3, doesn't matter as long as you get through all 3 of them. Again, wrap, insert your hook, wrap, and that second one's always giving me issues. What's going on? Back in the back bump, wrapping it. No, it's a wrap first, then insert, insert, wrap it again, then pull through 3. What is the problem here? Goodness, all right, wrap into the back bump, pull it through that back bump, 3 loops on the hook, wrap the yarn, pull through 3, wrap the hook, insert through the back bump, pull it through the back bump, wrap it again, pull through 3. There we go. Sometimes our first few stitches just don't want to cooperate. There we go. Now we're moving right along. There we go. And we're just doing this throughout the rest of the row and throughout the rest of the project. I'll finish this row with you guys. So again, I see my little tension is a bit wonky here because I was trying to figure it out. And you know, it'd only be fair to show you how to fix that. You notice something like that, you don't want to have that as, you know, part of the project. So this is a term that's called frogging, and it's used when you have to pull your stitches out to a point where you've got to go back to your mistake. In my case, I'm going to start all the way back. Now that I understand what I'm doing again, I apologize, folks. It's super early. I've done 7 videos in 7 days of different stitches and different projects, so my mind's not quite awake yet. Alright, so this is called frogging because it sounds, because you're ripping it, rip it, and it sounds like a ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. Alright, so this should get me back to my initial starting point here. Finding my loop, now that I've worked through them, they're pretty much showing themselves to me. Wrapping my yarn, inserting into that space, wrapping that yarn again, pulling it through that back bump, still giving me 3 loops, wrapping it, pull through all 3. Okay, wrap, insert into, for me I'm using the back bump. If you decided to go through the front stitches or back stitches, by all means continue to do that and be consistent with where you're placing them. I'm working the back bump, wrapping and pulling through all 3. Wrap, insert, wrap, pull through 3. Wrap, insert, pull through 3. Wrap, insert, pull through that stitch, wrap again, pull through all 3, wrap, insert, pull through, wrap, pull through 3. Alright, so again my tension's a little wonky at the bottom here, but you know what, it'll work itself out. It always does. I'm going to continue to go on. So wrap, insert, pull through that stitch, wrap, pull through 3, wrap, insert, pull through that stitch, wrap, pull through 3. Okay, I'm going to keep doing that the entire row. Get that first row of half double crochet stitches done. There we go. Again, if you have to use your fingernail to assist in placing your hook through and also helping to maybe pull through, by all means. Again, there's no right or wrong as long as you're making the stitch. You're wrapping, you're inserting, you pulled it through that stitch, you wrap it again, and you're pulling through all 3. As long as you're doing that, and you're consistent with where you're placing your stitches, everything will work out. we're getting close to the end here. I've got a few more stitches to go. Okay, so I've got just one more, because that's your slip stitch. I'm not really putting into that, but you got one more bump here. Alright, there we go. That's looking, yeah, it's still a little short here, but it'll work itself out. Again, this is just my demo. I've actually got a partially one made here. I'm going to continue on and make at some point. That's the idea anyway. So you've just completed your first row. Again, you need to, I know I apologize, I've just on autopilot. You ended it looking like this. You got to turn your work. Okay, you got to turn your work, and you've got to again chain 2 to get the height of your double crochet stitch. And now you're working back. So at this point, you don't have a back bump to work into. You have, again, you have your front loop, you have a back loop, you have both loops, and let's see, there is usually a little sidebar. That's more for intermediate and advanced, so I'm not going to confuse you with that. So for our purposes, we're just going to go through both. So we're not going to work into this first stitch, because that's where your chain is coming out of. You want to go into this next one here where I'm pinching. So we're going to wrap the yarn. We're going through both the front and back loop, wrapping that yarn, pulling it through that stitch. You've got 3 on your hook, wrapping and pulling through all 3. I think you find that once you get your chain and your first initial row of stitches out of the way, it's going to be a lot easier for you to work. You have more to grab onto. So wrap the hook, insert through both front and back loops if you're following what I'm doing. Grab the yarn, pull it through that stitch, wrap the yarn, and pull through all 3. So when I say wrap, it's technically called the yarn over, and people just use different terms to mean the same thing. So yarn over, insert your hook, grab that yarn, 3 on your hook, pull through all 3. Yarn over, insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. Yarn over, insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. And that is what you're doing on repeat for each row. Okay, now that I've got my crochet mojo going, I can pretty much just, I feel like I can, you know, just autopilot this, which is typically what I do. Except for when it's, you know, 3:20 in the morning and your brain's not fully awake yet. But, you know, offer a bit of credit for noticing my mistakes and offering to fix and not just ignoring and, you know, not fixing them. There we go. I mean, how can I be a good teacher if I just ignore my mistakes and not point them out when I notice it? Alright, we do have one more stitch here. I know it might be hard, and I should have told you to get stitch markers or use stitch markers or find some way to mark the last stitch of the row, because it's very easy for beginners to miss or not be able to identify if that's really the last stitch in the row. So these are just like plastic safety pins. If you don't have these, regular safety pins will work, bobby pins will work. You can use yarn of a contrasting color, just small sections of it to kind of like just stick in temporarily to let you know that you need to work into that last space. So for me, I just know that this is a space to be worked. So I'm going to put my last stitch in that row. Okay, and we're going to turn our work and just do it all over again. Again, you are chaining 2 to get to the height of the double crochet stitch, and you are not working in this space because your chain is coming out of it. You're working into the next available space. Okay, so again, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook, pull that yarn through, make sure your loops are all in the proper spot on your hook to get the same tension. You're yarning over and pulling through all 3, and you're doing that into each stitch all the way down the row, just as you have been doing. Again, you are free to pause the video at any point to catch up or to hear the instructions again. But I will finish off this last row before showing you what I've done so far to the scarf in the making. Okay. Yeah, you're wrapping the hook, yarning over, inserting through the front and back loop, bringing your yarn through, yarning over, pulling through 3. So again, you can pause, rewind, oops, pulling through 3, go, and we have one more. Okay, I know it doesn't quite look right, but definitely as a beginner, I highly recommend you find some means of marking your last stitch in the row so you don't miss it, because what ends up happening for a lot of beginners, myself included, when I was first learning, is if you don't know to mark your stitches, your edging gets thrown off. So you want straight edges like you see here. So that's what helps. If you mark your last stitch in the row, you know exactly where to stop. Because if you find that you're adding stitches and not knowing, your edges go from being straight to doing this. Or if you're not catching that last stitch and you're stopping before, your edges go from being straight to looking like this. So it's a scarf. I assume you want your edges to be straight. So it's important that you identify where your last stitch is when you first maybe make that initial chain. And then as you create each row, whether you move that marker up or you have a couple of markers to kind of keep you in check as you go, that's perfectly fine too. And again, if you don't have these plastic little markers, regular safety pins will work, bobby pins will work, twist ties that you get in like with the boxes of trash bags that nobody ever uses, those will work. And any other yarn that you're not using, if you got scrap yarn from a previous project, just cut, just short lengths. They don't have to be any longer than the hook itself, and you can just sort of feed it through so you can identify where that last stitch is. So you can be resourceful, find something that helps you locate your last stitch so that your edging stays consistent. Now, one thing to make mention with this particular stitch is that, let's see if I can show you here. It's probably going to be pretty obvious, maybe in the blue, but as you work your rows, you're going to start to see that at the ends of the rows there's these little gaps. Okay, that is completely normal. Don't freak out about it. That's just how this stitch tends to work out. Okay, there is a way to avoid having these little gaps at the, it's at both ends. Okay, there is a way to sort of correct that, to make it so it doesn't show up. That will be another video. I don't want to confuse you. This is meant for absolute beginners. So I'm going to show you the stitch in its absolute natural form. I just want you guys to know that if you happen to see these little gaps at the beginning and ends of your rows, that it's nothing that you've done wrong. This is just how this stitch works up, and in some cases it's not overly noticeable, but this is how a half double crochet stitch will look. Okay, so you've got that, and as for the measurement, it's probably close to about 30 inches if I had to guess. So I'm not quite where I need to be for an adult length, but you can see that this yarn from the Caron cakes, the big cakes, how the colors are pretty consistent as far as like how much color between colors. So if I do, like, you know, if I lay the orange, let's see, the yellow over the orange, because I don't want to start the blue. The blue has probably a little bit taken off from being the slip knot side, but you're pretty much getting the same amount of color in between. And what's nice is that you don't have to stop at a row, you don't have to attach your yarn in a new color, it just automatically changes for you. So if you like this option, I do highly recommend that you get yourself a Caron Big Cakes, because like I said in the beginning, this is going to be enough yarn for you to make this project any size without having to attach a new strand of yarn halfway through because you didn't have enough. These do come in different color combinations, by the way. This one happens to be called Rainbow Jellies. Okay, so that's what this is. And so your scarf will look very similar to this. Of course, you're welcome to use a solid color of yarn for your work, but just remember to pick up enough yarn for yourself so that you don't have to worry about attaching a new strand to an existing strand. And again, if you're using a 4 weight, you need a minimum of 375 yards for your smallest size, to 500 for like an adult size. If you're using a smaller weight, using a 3 weight, yardage happens to be the same. If you're using a bigger weight, a 5 or a 6, those you actually need less of because it's a thicker yarn, so it's going to actually kind of, I'd say, work up faster than what we're currently using in this demonstration here. So again, you can look these up. I will try to remember to maybe post this in the video at some point to have as a visual along with this. Alright, so that is pretty much what I show and demonstrate in lesson 2 of my live classes. I show you how to create your slip knot. I show you how to chain your foundation row. I show you how to create the half double crochet stitch when I'm not overtired. I show you how to turn your work and how to keep your edges straight by using stitch markers. Stitch markers are also great. Like, this project's been sitting for a few weeks. I haven't touched it in since my last event about a month ago. So I've got my end of the row marked, and I've also have my beginning where I will continue with the working yarn. That way my work doesn't unravel while it sits or gets moved around. So that's a helpful hint to make note of. So yeah, that is lesson 2. So I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen here, and if you have, I welcome you to join me again for lesson 3, which is already posted. Lesson 1 is already posted. I still have yet to do lesson 4 and lesson 5, but I can assure you those will be coming very soon. So thank you again for joining me here at Heather's Crochet Corner. I appreciate that you take the time to watch these videos. If you would like to leave me a like because you've enjoyed the content, I would absolutely love that. Don't forget to subscribe, and so that if you want to get notified of future videos as they get posted, you'll get notified of that, so you won't miss any content. So thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video.